Clara Winslow stood at the edge of the frozen creek, her hands shaking as she held the only photograph she had of the man who'd broken her. 3 years of promises. 3 years of believing she'd be someone's wife. Gone the moment he learned she couldn't give him children. She let the photograph fall into the icy water and watched his face disappear beneath the current. Tomorrow, she'd board a stagecoach to Wyoming Territory. A widower with 6 children needed help. He didn't want love. He didn't want a wife. He just wanted someone who'd stay. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all she deserved. If you want to follow Clara's journey, subscribe to our channel and watch until the end. Comment your city below. I want to see how far this story travels. The stagecoach hit a rut, and Clara Winslow's head knocked against the wooden frame hard enough to blur her vision. "You all right there, miss?" The man across from her, a cattle trader with tobacco-stained teeth, leaned forward with too much interest. "Fine," Clara said. She wasn't. Her ribs ached from 2 days of rough roads. Her stomach had given up on food somewhere around the Colorado border, and the letter in her pocket felt heavier than when she'd first received it. She turned toward the frost-covered window and pressed her forehead against the cold glass. Wyoming Territory, December 1878. She was either the bravest woman in Ohio or the most foolish, probably both. Visiting family, the cattle trader pressed. No. Friends, no. Then what brings a woman like you all the way out here in winter? Clara finally looked at him. A woman like me. He grinned, revealing more gaps than teeth. Pretty, alone, no ring on your finger. I'm answering an advertisement. His eyebrows shot up. Mail order bride, housekeeper. Same thing out here, miss. Man brings a woman to his homestead. Don't matter what he calls it. She ends up in his bed sooner or later. Clara's jaw tightened. Then I suppose I'll be the exception. The cattle trader laughed a wet, ugly sound. They all say that. She didn't respond. She'd learned that silence was the only weapon a woman traveling alone could safely carry. The stagecoach lurched again, and Clara reached into her pocket. Her fingers finding the letter she'd read so many times, the paper had grown soft at the folds. Widow with 6 children seeks woman of good character and strong constitution. No romance required. Partnership only. Honest work for honest pay. Reply to Jonas Hartley, Clearwater, Wyoming Territory. She hadn't told anyone in Cincinnati why she was leaving. Not Mrs. Patterson at the boarding house. Not the other seamstresses at the dress shop. Not even Reverend Morris, who'd baptized her as an infant and married her parents before they'd died. She'd simply packed her single carpet bag, paid her final week's rent, and walked to the stagecoach station before dawn. Running away, her mother would have called it. Clara preferred to think of it as running toward what she wasn't certain. But anything was better than staying in a city where everyone knew her shame. The stagecoach pulled into Clearwater just past noon, though the winter sky was so gray it could have been dusk. Clara stepped down onto frozen mud, her legs unsteady from days of travel. The town was smaller than she'd expected. A general store. A saloon with piano music bleeding through warped doors. A church with a crooked steeple. A blacksmith. A livery stable. And people. Not many, but enough. Enough to stop what they were doing and stare at the stranger who'd climbed off the stage with nothing but a worn carpetbag and a dress too thin for Wyoming winter. Clara straightened her spine. She'd been stared at before. Miss Winslow? She turned. The man walking toward her was tall, broad through the shoulders, with dark hair that needed cutting and a beard that needed trimming. He wore a heavy coat patched at the elbows and boots caked with mud and what might have been manure. But it was his eyes that caught her. Gray like the winter sky. And tired. So tired. Mr. Hartley. He nodded once. You came. I said I would. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or suspicion. Most folks say a lot of things they don't mean. I'm not most folks. He studied her for a long moment, then reached for her carpet bag. Is this all you brought? It's all I have. Another flicker. This time she couldn't read it. Wagons this way, he said. Ranch is about 3 hours out. We'll make it before dark if we leave now. Clara followed him, aware of the eyes still watching. A woman in a blue bonnet whispered something to another woman in a gray shawl. A man outside the saloon tipped his hat, but his smile had edges. Small towns, Clara thought. Same everywhere. Hungry for gossip. Suspicious of strangers. Quick to judge and slow to forget. She climbed onto the wagon seat without help. Jonas Hartley glanced at her, then at the hand he'd been about to offer. I can manage, she said. I see that. He climbed up beside her and took the reins. The horses, 2 sturdy bays with winter coats thick as blankets, started forward without command. They rode in silence for the first mile. Clara watched the town disappear behind them, swallowed by snow-covered plains that stretched to the horizon. The sky pressed down, heavy and white. The wind cut through her thin coat like it wasn't there. She didn't complain. She wouldn't give him a reason to send her back. You're cold, Jonas said finally. I'm fine. You're shivering. I said I'm fine. He made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a grunt. Hard to tell with men like him. Then he reached behind the seat and pulled out a wool blanket heavy and rough. He dropped it in her lap without looking at her. Thank you, Clara said quietly. Can't have you freezing to death before you meet the children. She wrapped the blanket around her shoulders. It smelled like horses and wood smoke and something else. Something warm. Something that made her chest ache for reasons she didn't want to examine. Tell me about them, she said. The children. Yes. Jonas was quiet for a moment, his eyes on the road ahead. Ruth's the eldest, 14. She's been running the house since her mother died. Does more than any child should. How long ago? 2 years. Ellen died giving birth to the youngest, Molly. Clara's breath caught. She died in childbirth. Molly came early, middle of a blizzard. Couldn't get the doctor in time. His voice was flat, but his knuckles were white on the reins. Ellen held on long enough to name her. Then she was gone. I'm so sorry. He didn't respond. Clara understood. Some griefs were too big for words. The others, she asked gently. Henry's 11, thinks he's a man already. Tries to help with the ranch, but he's still just a boy. Lucy's 9, quiet. Keeps to herself mostly. Samuel's 7, wild as a Mustang, that one. Gets into everything. Violet's 5, shy. Barely talks to anyone but Ruth. And Molly just turned 2. His jaw tightened. Doesn't remember her mother at all. She's the only one who doesn't wake up crying for her. Clara felt the weight of that statement settle in her chest. 6 children. 6 different griefs. 6 different ways of being broken. And her a stranger about to walk into the middle of it. Do they know I'm coming? Ruth knows. Told her last week. And Jonas's mouth pressed into a thin line. She's not happy about it. I expected that. Did you? Clara met his eyes. Her mother died. Her father's bringing home a strange woman. Of course she's not happy. I wouldn't be either. Something shifted in his expression. The suspicion faded slightly, replaced by something that looked almost like respect. You might be all right, Miss Winslow. Clara. If we're going to be partners, you should call me Clara. He nodded slowly. Jonas, then. They rode on. The snow started falling. The Hartley Ranch appeared through the gray veil of snowfall like something from a dream. A 2-story house, weathered but solid. A barn twice the size of the house. A chicken coop, a smokehouse, a well with a hand pump already crusted with ice. Split-rail fences, marking off pastures where cattle huddled together against the cold. And on the porch, despite the falling snow, a girl stood watching, Ruth. Clara knew it immediately. The rigid posture, the crossed arms, the expression that was half fear and half fury. Jonas pulled the wagon to a stop. "Wait here a moment." He climbed down and walked toward the porch. Clara couldn't hear what he said, but she watched Ruth's face, watched the girl shake her head, watched her turn and disappear into the house, slamming the door behind her. Jonas stood there for a moment, his shoulders heavy. Then he turned and walked back to the wagon. "She needs time," Clara said. "She's had 2 years. 2 years of being mother to 5 children. That's not time. That's survival." Jonas looked at her sharply. "How do you know that?" "Because I was 12 when my parents died. I know what it's like to grow up before you're ready." He was silent for a long moment. Then he offered his hand to help her down. This time, Clara took it. His grip was rough, calloused, warm, despite the cold. And brief. He let go as soon as her feet touched the ground. "I'll show you the house," he said. "Then I've got to check on the cattle. Storm's coming in tonight." Clara gathered her carpet bag and followed him up the porch steps. The house was warmer than outside, but not by much. A fire burned low in the main room, and Clara could see her breath in the air. "Ruth," Jonas called. "Bring the children down." No answer. "Ruth." Footsteps overhead. Then slowly, figures began to appear on the stairs. First Ruth, her dark hair pulled back in a severe braid, her face carefully blank. She carried the youngest, a toddler with blonde curls and her mother's gray eyes. Molly. Behind Ruth came the others. Henry, trying to look older than 11, his jaw set in an imitation of his father. Lucy, half hidden behind her brother, watching Clara with wide, wary eyes. Samuel, fidgeting, unable to stand still. Violet clinging to Ruth's skirt, her thumb in her mouth. 6 children, 6 pairs of eyes. All of them waiting to see what Clara would do. She set down her carpet bag and knelt on the cold wooden floor, bringing herself to their level. "I know you don't know me," she said quietly. "And I know you didn't ask for me to come here. But I'm not here to replace anyone. I'm here to help. That's all." Silence. Then Samuel, the wild one, stepped forward. "Can you cook?" "Yes." "Better than Ruth." Samuel. Ruth snapped, but Clara smiled. "I don't know yet. I haven't tasted Ruth's cooking." "It's bad," Samuel said solemnly. "She burns everything." "I do not." Ruth's face flushed red. "You burned the biscuits last night." "The stove was too hot." "You always say that." Clara watched the exchange, something warm spreading through her chest. This was real. This was family. Messy and loud and imperfect. "Maybe," she said carefully, "Ruth and I could cook together sometimes. She could teach me what your family likes, and I could help with the things that are difficult." Ruth's eyes narrowed. "I don't need help." "I know you don't." Clara held her gaze. "But I'm here anyway, so we might as well make the best of it." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Molly, still in Ruth's arms, reached toward Clara with chubby fingers. "Pretty," she said. Ruth pulled back instinctively, putting distance between the toddler and the stranger. Clara didn't push. She simply stood and turned to Jonas. "Show me the kitchen and I'll start supper. You said there's a storm coming." He nodded, something like relief crossing his face. "Pantry's through there. Not much stock left. I was supposed to go to town for supplies next week." "I'll manage." And she did. Supper was potato soup and the last of the salt pork, stretched thin but filling. Clara had found flour and lard and made biscuits that rose high and golden, nothing like the hard, flat discs she'd seen in the waste bin. The children ate in silence at first, sneaking glances at her between bites. Clara didn't force conversation. She'd learned that trust couldn't be demanded. It had to be earned. "These are good," Henry said, finally reaching for his third biscuit. "Thank you." "Mama's were better." Ruth's voice was sharp-cutting. Clara didn't flinch. "I'm sure they were. You don't know anything about her." You're right, I don't. But I'd like to if you'd tell me sometime. Ruth's eyes widened, then narrowed. She hadn't expected that. Before she could respond, Violet spoke for the first time, her voice barely above a whisper. Mama put honey in hers. Clara turned to the little girl, gentle, careful. Honey in the biscuits. Violet nodded, still half hidden behind Ruth. Made them sweet. That sounds wonderful. Maybe we could try that tomorrow, if there's any honey left. There is, Jonas said. He'd been silent through most of the meal, watching. Ellen kept bees. Ruth's been tending them since. Clara looked at Ruth. You keep bees. The girl shrugged, defensive. Somebody had to. That's impressive. I've never kept bees. You'll have to show me. Ruth stared at her, searching for mockery, for condescension. Finding none, she looked away. Maybe. It wasn't acceptance, but it wasn't rejection either. Clara would take it. After supper, Jonas disappeared to check on the livestock. The storm was building outside, wind howling around the corners of the house, snow piling against the windows. Clara cleaned the kitchen while the children scattered. Henry to his chores, Samuel and Lucy to some game in the corner, Violet trailing after Ruth, who carried Molly upstairs for bed. When the kitchen was clean, Clara stood in the center of the empty room, suddenly exhausted. What was she doing here, 2,000 miles from everything she knew? In a house full of strangers, in the middle of a Wyoming blizzard. For what? Because a man she'd never met wrote an advertisement. Because she had nowhere else to go. Because the alternative was spending the rest of her life in Cincinnati, watching other women raise the children she'd never have, pretending she didn't hear the whispers, barren. Broken. What man would want her? The door opened behind her and Clara spun around. Ruth stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. The children are in bed, she said. All except Samuel. He won't settle. He wants... She stopped, her jaw tightening. He wants what? Ruth looked away. Mama used to sing to him. Every night. I can't... Clara understood. Ruth couldn't carry her mother's songs. The weight was too heavy. What did she sing? I don't remember. Ruth's voice cracked. I can't remember her voice anymore. I try, but it's just... gone. Clara moved toward her slowly, the way you'd approach a wounded animal. That doesn't mean you've forgotten her. Doesn't it? No. You remember her love. You remember what she taught you. You remember her bees and her honey biscuits, and the way she tucked in your brother every night. The sound of her voice is just a small piece of who she was. Ruth's eyes glistened. She blinked rapidly, fighting the tears. I was supposed to help her, she whispered. The night Molly came, I was supposed to get clean water and towels, and I couldn't. I couldn't get to the well fast enough. The snow was too deep. And by the time I got back, Clara's heart shattered. This girl, this 14-year-old girl, carrying guilt that would crush a grown woman. Ruth, look at me. Slowly, Ruth's eyes met hers. Your mother's death was not your fault. Not the snow, not the well, not the water, none of it. You were 12 years old. You did everything you could. It wasn't enough. It never feels like enough. That's not the same as it being your fault. Ruth stared at her, trembling. Then for just a moment, her mask cracked. Why are you being nice to me? I've been horrible to you. You've been scared. There's a difference. I'm not scared. Yes, you are. You're terrified that if you let me help, it means you failed. That you weren't good enough to do it alone. Clara took a breath. But Ruth, you were never supposed to do it alone. You're a child. I'm not a child. You are, and that's not an insult. That's a gift. One you've been robbed of for 2 years. Ruth's tears finally fell. Silent. Furious. The tears of someone who hadn't let herself cry in far too long. Clara didn't touch her. Didn't try to hold her. just stood there, present witness to the grief that had been locked away. "I miss her," Ruth choked out. "I miss her so much." "I know. And I hate her. For leaving. For making me do this. Is that terrible?" "No. That's human." Ruth sobbed, then really sobbed, her body shaking with the force of it. And Clara stood there, not touching, not moving, just being. When the storm inside Ruth finally quieted, the girl wiped her face with her sleeve and looked at Clara with new eyes. "You're not what I expected," she said. "What did you expect? Someone trying to replace her? Someone who'd come in and pretend everything was fine and expect us to pretend too? I can't replace her. I wouldn't try. I'm just—" Clara searched for the right words. "I'm just someone who knows what it's like to lose everything, and to keep going anyway." Ruth was quiet for a long moment. "Samuel's in the second room on the left. He likes the song about the river. I don't remember all the words, but maybe you could just hum something. Something soft." Clara nodded. "I can do that." She turned to go, but Ruth's voice stopped her. "Miss Winslow." "Clara, please." Ruth swallowed. "Clara, I'm glad you're here. I won't say it again. Maybe not for a long time. But I wanted you to know. Just once." Clara felt something warm and fragile bloom in her chest. "Thank you, Ruth. That means more than you know." She left the girl standing in the kitchen and climbed the stairs to sing A Stranger's Child to sleep. Samuel's room was small, barely more than a closet with a narrow bed and a window rattled by the wind. The boy lay under a pile of quilts, his eyes wide in the darkness. "You came," he said. "Ruth said you couldn't sleep." "The storm's loud." Clara sat on the edge of his bed. "It is, but storms pass. They always do." "Are you going to stay?" The question so simple, so weighted. "I'm going to try." People say things and then they leave. The teacher left. The preacher left. Even Grandma left. Your grandmother. She came after Mama died. Stayed 3 months. Said she couldn't handle us. Too many. Too loud. Too much. Clara's hands curled into fists in her lap. How could anyone say that to children who'd just lost their mother? "I'm not your grandmother," she said quietly. "And I'm not going to leave because things are hard." Promise. She shouldn't promise. She'd been in this house for less than a day. She didn't know. These children didn't know. This life didn't know if she could survive a Wyoming winter. But looking at this boy, this wild, lonely, terrified boy, she found she couldn't say anything else. "I promise." Samuel studied her for a long moment. Then he scooted over, making room. "Will you sing?" Clara didn't know the song about the river, but she knew other songs. Songs her own mother had sung back before the fever took her back, when Clara still believed the world was kind. She sang softly a lullaby about stars and sleep and morning coming. Her voice was thin, unpracticed, nothing like a mother's voice should be. But Samuel's eyes grew heavy anyway. His breathing slowed. His small body relaxed. And Clara sat there in the darkness, singing to a child who wasn't hers, in a house where she didn't belong, while outside the storm raged on. When Samuel finally slept, she stopped singing and simply sat watching his face. "I can do this," she thought. Maybe. "Samuel." She found Jonas in the kitchen when she came back down. He stood by the window, a cup of coffee in his hands, watching the snow pile against the glass. He didn't turn when she entered. "He's asleep," Clara said. "Good." She hesitated in the doorway, unsure of her place. This was his house, his family. She was just what hired help. A stranger he'd brought home out of desperation. "There's coffee if you want it," he said. "Thank you." She poured a cup and stood on the opposite side of the kitchen, keeping the table between them. "Ruth talked to you." It wasn't a question. "Yes." "She doesn't talk to anyone, not since Ellen." Clara wrapped her hands around the warm cup. She's been carrying too much. I know. His voice was rough. I've tried to help her, but every time I do, she just shuts down. Like I'm making it worse. You remind her of her mother. He turned, then his brow furrowed. What? You have her eyes, her mannerisms probably. When Ruth looks at you, she sees what she lost. It's easier to push you away than to feel that every day. Jonas stared at her. How do you know that? Because I did the same thing. After my parents died, I couldn't look at my aunt. She looked too much like my mother. I was cruel to her for years before I understood why. And now she's dead, and I never got to apologize. Silence. The wind howled, the fire crackled. Jonas set down his cup. Why did you really come here, Clara? She could lie. Could give him the same story she'd told herself about fresh starts and new beginnings and leaving the past behind. But something about the darkness, about the storm, about the exhaustion in his eyes, made her tell the truth. I was engaged, for 3 years, to a man I thought I'd spend my life with. Jonas waited. When I was 26, I got sick, fever, nearly died. When I recovered, the doctor told me I'd never be able to have children. Something about the fever damaging. She stopped. It doesn't matter what. The point is, I told my fiancé, and within a month he'd found someone else. They're married now. She's had 2 children. He left you because you couldn't give him babies. He left me because I couldn't give him what he wanted. I was broken, incomplete. What man wants that? Jonas's jaw tightened. A damn fool, that's who. Clara blinked, surprised. A woman's worth isn't in her womb. Any man who thinks otherwise isn't worth marrying. She didn't know what to say. She'd expected pity or discomfort, or the careful distance people always put between themselves and her shame. Not anger, not on her behalf. You came all this way, Jonas said slowly, to a place you've never been to raise children you've never met because some bastard back east made you believe you weren't enough. That's not... It is. He stepped closer, still keeping the table between them, but his eyes held hers. I've got 6 children who need someone to care for them. 6 children who've been through hell and need someone who won't give up on them. And you showed up. In December. In a Wyoming winter. With 1 bag and a thin coat, and more courage than half the men in this territory. Clara's eyes burned. I don't know what happens next, Jonas said. I don't know if this will work, but I want you to know something right now so there's no confusion. What? You're not broken, you're not incomplete, and you're not here because no one else would have you. You're here because I need you. My children need you, and that's worth something. Don't let anyone, least of all yourself, tell you otherwise. Clara's hands trembled around her cup. She set it down before she could spill it. You don't know me, she whispered. Not yet. His voice softened. But I'd like to, if you'll stay long enough to let me. Outside the storm howled. Inside something shifted. Not love? Not yet. Maybe not ever. But something. A foundation. A beginning. Clara took a breath. I'll stay. Jonas nodded once, and for the first time since she'd met him, the corner of his mouth lifted. Good. Now get some sleep. Storm's supposed to break by morning and there's a lot of work to do. He walked past her toward the stairs, pausing at the doorway. Clara. Yes. Thank you. For coming. For staying. For what you said to Ruth. He hesitated. Ellen would have liked you. Before she could respond, he was gone. Clara stood alone in the kitchen, the fire dying, the storm raging, and wondered how a single day could change everything she thought she knew about her life. She'd come here expecting to be a servant, a placeholder, a woman too broken for anything better. Instead, she'd found a family, shattered, grieving, imperfect, but still a family, and maybe, just maybe, a place where she could belong. The storm broke before dawn, leaving behind a silence so deep Clara could hear her own heartbeat. She woke in the small guest room, disoriented for a moment, the unfamiliar walls pressing close. Then memory returned. Wyoming. The Hartley Ranch. 6 children. A widower with tired eyes. She dressed quickly in the cold, her fingers clumsy on buttons, her breath visible in the gray morning light. The house was quiet, but she could smell wood smoke. Someone had already started the fire. Jonas stood by the stove when she came down, pouring coffee into a tin cup. He looked like he hadn't slept. "Storm took part of the fence on the north pasture," he said without greeting. "Lost 2 calves, maybe more." "I'm sorry." He shrugged, but the tension in his shoulders told a different story. "It happens. Part of ranching." Clara moved toward the pantry. "I'll make breakfast. You should eat before you go out." "Already ate." "No, you didn't. The pantry's exactly how I left it last night." Jonas turned, something flickering in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or annoyance at being caught. "I don't have time for—" "Sit down." He stared at her. "Please," she added softer. "You can't fix fences on an empty stomach. Give me 10 minutes. For a moment she thought he'd refuse. Then he pulled out a chair and sat wrapping his hands around the coffee cup like it was the only warm thing in the world. Clara worked quickly. Eggs from the cold box. The last of yesterday's biscuits warmed on the stove. A slice of salt pork fried until the edges crisped. She set the plate in front of him without ceremony. Jonas looked at it, then at her. "You don't have to do this." "I know. I hired you to help with the children, not to serve me. Eat your breakfast, Jonas." He ate, and Clara felt something settle in her chest, something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. The children came down one by one as the smell of food filled the house. Samuel first, his hair wild, his eyes still heavy with sleep. Then Lucy, quiet as a shadow, slipping into her chair without a word. Violet followed, clutching a worn rag doll, her thumb finding her mouth the moment she sat down. Henry came next, already dressed for work, his young face set in an expression too serious for 11 years. "Pa, I can help with the fence. You've got chores here." "I can do both." "Henry." Jonas's voice was firm, but not unkind. "I need you here, looking after your sisters, making sure Miss Winslow has what she needs." Henry's jaw tightened. He didn't argue, but Clara saw the frustration burning in his eyes. Ruth was last carrying Molly on her hip. She didn't look at Clara as she sat down, but she didn't glare either. Progress, Clara thought. Small, but real. "I'll be back before dark," Jonas said, pushing back from the table. "If the weather holds." "And if it doesn't?" He paused at the door. "Then I'll be back when I can." Clara nodded. "Be careful." Something passed between them, brief and unspoken. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him, leaving Clara alone with 6 children and a silence that felt like a test. Samuel broke it first. "What are we going to do today?" Clara turned to face them, 6 pairs of eyes watching, waiting. "Well," she said, "I thought we'd start with the dishes. Then I need to take stock of the pantry, figure out what we have and what we need." "That's boring," Samuel said. "Probably, but it's necessary. Mama used to let us play in the snow after a big storm." The words hung in the air. Ruth's face went pale. Clara took a breath. "Then maybe after the chores are done, we can do that too." Samuel's eyes widened. "Really?" "I don't see why not. But chores first. That's the deal." She expected argument. Instead, Samuel jumped up from the table and grabbed his plate. "I'll wash. I'm good at washing." "You're terrible at washing," Ruth muttered. "Am not. You left soap on all the cups last time." "That was one time." Clara watched them bicker, a smile tugging at her lips. This was familiar. This was family, even if it wasn't hers. The morning passed in a rhythm of work and small negotiations. Clara learned that Lucy would do anything asked if you didn't look directly at her. That Violet would help if you let her hold her doll while she worked. that Samuel needed to be watched constantly, or he'd disappear into some adventure of his own making. And Ruth. Ruth watched everything Clara did with sharp, assessing eyes, waiting for a mistake. Clara gave her none. By mid-morning, the house was cleaner than it had been in months. Clara could tell by the way Ruth kept looking around, her expression shifting between reluctant approval and something that looked almost like resentment. "You didn't have to scrub the floors," Ruth said finally. "They needed scrubbing." "I was going to do it." "I know. But now you don't have to." Ruth's hands clenched at her sides. "I don't need you to do my work for me." Clara stopped setting down the rag she'd been using. "Ruth, I'm not trying to take over. I'm trying to help." "I don't need help." "Everyone needs help sometimes." "Not me." Ruth's voice cracked. "Not anymore." She turned and fled up the stairs before Clara could respond. Clara sighed and went back to work. By noon, the snow had stopped completely, and weak sunlight filtered through the clouds. The children were restless, pressed against windows, watching the white world outside with hungry eyes. "You promised," Samuel said for the fourth time. "You said after chores." "The chores aren't finished. Most of them are." Clara looked at the expectant faces. Even Lucy had emerged from her quiet corner, her eyes bright with hope. "All right," Clara said. "But you need to bundle up properly. Every layer you own. And you stay where I can see you." The children scattered like startled birds racing for coats and scarves and mittens. Only Ruth remained standing in the doorway, Molly balanced on her hip. "You're going outside with them." "Someone has to watch them." "That's my job." Clara met her eyes steadily. "Then come with us. Show me how it's done." Ruth hesitated. For a moment, Clara saw the girl she used to be before grief had hardened her, before responsibility had stolen her childhood. "Molly can't go out," Ruth said finally. "She'll catch cold." "Then stay inside with her. I'll watch the others." "You don't know what to watch for. Samuel runs off. Lucy doesn't pay attention. Violet cries if—" "Ruth?" Clara's voice was gentle but firm. "I can handle it. Take an hour. Rest. Play with Molly. Do something for yourself." Ruth stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. "Do something for myself." "Yes. Read a book. Take a nap. Whatever you want." I can't just—" "You can. Right now. I've got them." Something in Ruth's face shifted. Not trust, not yet, but something close to it. A crack in the armor. "1 hour," Ruth said. 1 hour. Ruth turned away, but not before Clara saw her eyes glistening. Outside, the world was white and blinding. The children tumbled into the snow like puppies, laughing and shrieking and throwing handfuls of powder at each other. Clara watched from the porch, her arms wrapped around herself against the cold, a smile she couldn't suppress spreading across her face. This was what she'd wanted. This moment, this feeling. Not children of her own body, maybe, but children who needed her. It was enough. It had to be enough. Samuel's snowball caught her square in the chest. "Got you," he crowed. Clara looked down at the snow splattered across her dress. Then she looked at Samuel, his face frozen somewhere between triumph and terror. "Oh," she said quietly, "you shouldn't have done that." Samuel's eyes went wide. Clara bent down, scooped up a handful of snow, and threw. Her aim was terrible. It missed Samuel entirely and hit Henry in the back of the head. "Hey. Sorry, I was aiming for—" Another snowball hit her shoulder. Lucy. Quiet little Lucy with a mischievous grin Clara had never seen before. What followed was chaos. Glorious, freezing, ridiculous chaos. Clara versus the children versus each other. Alliances formed and dissolved in seconds. Snow flew in every direction. When it was over, they lay scattered across the yard, gasping and laughing and soaked to the bone. "That was," Henry panted. "That was actually fun." "Don't sound so surprised," Clara said. Grown-ups don't usually play. I'm not usual. Henry laughed. A real laugh surprised out of him, and Clara felt something warm bloom in her chest. Then Violet screamed. Clara was on her feet before the sound faded, her heart hammering. What is it? Violet stood at the edge of the yard, pointing at something in the snow. Her face was white, her whole body trembling. Clara reached her in seconds, her eyes scanning for blood, for danger, for whatever had terrified the child. She found it. A dead bird. A crow, its black feathers stark against the white snow, its body frozen and stiff. "It's dead," Violet whispered. "Like Mama." Clara's breath caught. "It's just a bird, Violet. The cold was too much for it." "Mama got too cold too," Ruth said. "When Molly came, she got too cold and she couldn't get warm again." Oh God. Clara knelt in the snow, ignoring the cold seeping through her dress, bringing herself to Violet's level. "Violet, can you look at me?" Slowly, the little girl's eyes met hers. "Your mama didn't die because she was cold. She died because her body was tired from bringing Molly into the world. It wasn't the same as this bird." But Ruth said, Ruth was scared. When we're scared, we don't always explain things right. Violet's lip trembled. "I don't want anyone else to die." "I know, sweetheart. I know. Promise you won't die." Clara's heart cracked. How could she promise that? How could anyone? "I promise I'll do everything I can to stay with you for a very long time." It wasn't enough. She could see it in Violet's face. But it was all she could offer. Henry appeared beside them, his face serious. "Come on, Vi. Let's go inside. Clara can make hot cocoa." "Can she?" "I can," Clara said. "If there's cocoa in the pantry." "There is," Lucy said quietly. "Mama kept it for special days." "Then today is a special day." They went inside, leaving the dead bird behind, but Clara knew Violet would dream about it. Would dream about cold and death and the mother she barely remembered. Some wounds didn't heal. You just learned to carry them. Ruth was waiting in the kitchen when they came in. Molly in her arms, her face creased with worry. "I heard screaming. What happened?" "Violet found a dead bird," Clara said quietly. "She's all right, just shaken." Ruth's expression softened just slightly. "She's scared of death. Has been since Mama." "I know." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. As much as she could handle." Ruth nodded slowly. That's what Mama would have done." It was the closest thing to approval Clara had received. She held on to it like a lifeline. The hot cocoa helped. Clara found the tin in the back of the pantry, hidden behind jars of preserves like a secret treasure. She made it carefully, adding a little extra sugar, warming the milk until it steamed. The children gathered around the table, their hands wrapped around warm cups, their faces flushed from cold and play. For a moment, just a moment, they looked like a normal family. Then the door burst open. Jonas stood in the doorway, his face white, his breathing ragged. "Henry, get your coat." "Pa." "What's wrong?" "3 more calves down, and something spooked the cattle. They're scattered across the North Ridge. I need every hand I can get." Henry was on his feet instantly, his face lit with a mixture of fear and excitement. Finally, he was needed. Finally, he could prove himself. "I'm coming too," Samuel said. "No." "But Pa." "You're too young. Stay here with the women." Samuel's face crumpled. Clara saw Jonas register. It saw the flash of guilt, but he didn't have time for gentleness. "We'll be back before dark if we can. If not," he looked at Clara. "Keep the fire going. Don't let anyone outside after sunset." "Why?" "Just don't." He was gone before she could ask more. Henry running after him, and Clara was left with a cold knot of fear in her stomach. "What spooked the cattle?" Ruth asked quietly. "I don't know." "Pa doesn't scare easy. Whatever it is, it's bad." Clara looked at the younger children, their faces worried, their hot cocoa forgotten. "It'll be fine," she said, forcing confidence into her voice. "Your father knows what he's doing." But as the afternoon wore on and the shadows grew long, the unease didn't fade. Clara kept the children busy, mending, reading, teaching Lucy the stitches her own mother had taught her back when she still had a mother to teach her anything. But her eyes kept drifting to the window. Sunset came early in December. By 4 o'clock the light was fading. By 5 it was nearly dark. Still no sign of Jonas and Henry. "They should be back by now," Ruth said, her voice tight. "Your father said if not by dark." "I know what he said. But he's never this late. Not with Henry." Clara looked at the children. Samuel pretending not to listen, but hearing everything. Lucy, her face pale. Violet clutching her doll so tight the fabric strained. Even Molly seemed to sense the tension whimpering in Ruth's arms. "I'm sure they're fine. The cattle probably scattered farther than expected. Or something happened. Ruth, it's true. You don't know this land. You don't know what's out there." "Then tell me." Ruth hesitated. Then quietly, "Wolves. There's a pack that comes down from the mountains in winter, when food is scarce." Clara's blood went cold. "Pa shot one last year," Ruth continued. "But there are more. There's always more." The fire crackled. The wind moaned around the corners of the house. Clara made a decision. "Keep the children inside. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me or your father." "Where are you going?" "To check the barn. Make sure the horses are secure. If Jonas comes back, he'll need fresh mounts if his are tired." "I can do that." "You need to stay with the children." "But..." "Ruth." Clara gripped the girl's shoulders. "I need you here. They need you here. Can you do this?" For a moment, Ruth looked like the child she was. Scared, uncertain. Then her jaw set. "Yes." "Good. I'll be back in 10 minutes. Clara pulled on her coat, grabbed the lantern by the door, and stepped out into the darkness. The cold hit her like a fist. She thought she understood Wyoming winter, but this was different. This was cold that bit through clothing, that stole breath, that turned exposed skin to ice in minutes. She moved quickly toward the barn, the lantern's weak light barely penetrating the darkness. Snow crunched under her boots. Wind whipped her hair into her face. She reached the barn door, pulled it open, slipped inside. The horses stirred in their stalls, nervous, their eyes rolling white in the lantern light. "Easy," Clara murmured. "Easy now." She checked the water-added feed, made sure the doors were latched tight. Everything was fine. Everything was normal. Then she heard it. A howl. Long and low and far too close. Clara's hand found the pitchfork leaning against the wall. She gripped it tight, her knuckles white. Another howl. Closer. She should go back to the house. She should run. But her feet wouldn't move. The barn door rattled. Clara spun pitchfork, raised her heart in her throat. The door burst open. She screamed. "Clara! Clara! It's me!" Jonas, standing in the doorway, snow in his hair, his face wild with relief. "God, woman, I almost shot you. You almost shot me. You nearly gave me a heart attack." Behind him, Henry appeared leading 2 exhausted horses. "The wolves!" Clara gasped. "I heard. They've been trailing us for an hour. Came too close to the herd. Had to drive them off." "Are you hurt? Is Henry?" "We're fine. Cold and tired, but fine." Clara's legs gave out. She sat down hard on a hay bale, the pitchfork clattering to the floor. Jonas was beside her in an instant. "Clara, I thought..." She couldn't finish. Didn't know how. "Hey, look at me." She looked. His eyes were steady, warm despite the cold. His hand found hers, rough and frozen, but solid. Real. "I'm here. We're all here. You don't have to be scared." I wasn't scared for me. Something shifted in his expression. Understanding. Recognition. "The children?" he asked. "Inside. With Ruth. Safe." "Good." He helped her to her feet. Let's get back. All of us. They walked back to the house together, all four of them, the lantern light cutting a small path through the darkness. When the door opened, and Clara saw Ruth's face, saw the relief flood across it, she felt something settle in her chest. This was her place now. These were her people. Whatever came next, she would face it. She would stay. The fire blazed in the hearth, driving back the cold. The children gathered close, eager to hear of the adventure. Henry told the story, his voice growing louder with each retelling, the wolves getting bigger and closer every time. There must have been 20 of them. There were maybe 5, Jonas said dryly. 8 at least. 5. Pa, you never let me tell it right. Clara laughed. The sound surprised her, bubbling up from somewhere deep. Somewhere she'd thought was empty. Everyone looked at her. Sorry, she said. This is nice. Ruth's expression was unreadable. Jonas watched Clara with something in his eyes she couldn't name. Then Samuel climbed into her lap, his small body warm against hers. I'm glad you didn't get eaten by wolves, he said solemnly. Me too. Will you sing again tonight? Clara looked at Jonas, at Ruth, at all of them, this broken, beautiful family that had let her in. Yes, she said. I'll sing. And later, when the children were in bed and the house was quiet, Clara stood at the kitchen window and watched the stars emerge one by one. Jonas appeared beside her, a cup of coffee in each hand. Thought you might need this. Thank you. They stood in comfortable silence, drinking coffee, watching the night. You did good today, Jonas said finally. I didn't do anything. You kept them safe. Kept them calm. That's not nothing. Clara wrapped her hands around the warm cup. I was terrified. So was I. He paused. But you went to the barn anyway. Someone had to. You could have stayed inside, locked the doors like I said, and leave you out there without fresh horses, without anyone knowing where you were. Jonas turned to look at her. You went out into a Wyoming night with wolves hunting for horses you don't even know how to saddle properly. Clara felt her cheeks flush. How do you know I can't saddle a horse? Can you? No. He laughed. A real laugh surprised out of him, and Clara felt something warm unfurl in her chest. You're something else, Clara Winslow. Is that good or bad? Haven't decided yet. They smiled at each other, and for a moment the weight lifted, the grief, the fear, the uncertainty. Just two people standing in a warm kitchen sharing coffee and something that felt like hope. Then Ruth's voice cut through the moment. Pa, Molly's crying. She won't settle. Jonas sighed. Coming. He set down his cup and headed for the stairs, paused, turned back. Clara. Yes. Welcome to the family. He disappeared up the stairs, and Clara stood alone in the kitchen, tears burning in her eyes. Welcome to the family. She'd never had one. Not really. Not since her parents died. Now she did. And she would do whatever it took to keep it. The next morning, Clara woke to find Ruth sitting at the foot of her bed. Ruth, what's wrong? The girl's face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed. I need to tell you something. About Mama. About how she really died. Clara sat up slowly. I thought she died in childbirth. That's what Pa tells people. That's what everyone believes. Ruth's voice trembled. But it's not the whole truth. Clara waited. Mama was sick, before Molly came. She'd been sick for months, coughing, losing weight. Pa wanted to take her to a doctor in Cheyenne, but she refused. Said we couldn't afford it. Said she'd be fine. What was wrong with her? Consumption. We didn't know until the end. The doctor said she must have had it for years, that the pregnancy just made it worse, made her body too weak to fight. Clara's heart sank. Ruth. Pa blames himself for getting her pregnant again, for not making her see a doctor, for not being there when... Ruth's voice broke. She was alone. when it happened. The blizzard came and Pa was out with the cattle and I was trying to get water, and she was alone and she died alone, and I've never told anyone. But it was my fault because I should have stayed with her and I left and she died and—" Clara pulled the girl into her arms. Ruth fought for a moment, stiff and resistant. Then she collapsed sobbing against Clara's shoulder, years of guilt pouring out in great heaving waves. "It wasn't your fault," Clara whispered. "It wasn't. You were 12 years old. You were doing what she asked. I should have known. I should have stayed. You couldn't have saved her, Ruth. The consumption would have taken her eventually. You know that. But she died alone. She died knowing her children were safe, knowing you were taking care of them. That's what mattered to her." Ruth cried for a long time. Clara held her, stroking her hair, saying nothing more. Sometimes there were no words. Sometimes all you could do was be there. When the tears finally stopped, Ruth pulled back her face, blotchy and swollen. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For what? For being cruel to you. For not wanting you here. For— Stop!" Clara cupped the girl's face in her hands. "You were protecting yourself and your family. I understand that better than you know. How can you understand you don't know what it's like to— I lost everyone I loved by the time I was 15. My parents, my aunt, my grandmother. I know exactly what it's like to build walls so high no one can climb them." Ruth stared at her. "The difference," Clara continued, "is that you've got people on the other side of those walls. People who love you. People who need you to let them in." "What about you? Me? Who's on the other side of your walls?" Clara hesitated. No one. The answer was no one. She'd spent years making sure of it. But that wasn't true anymore, was it? "You," she said quietly. "All of you. If you'll let me." Ruth was silent for a long moment. Then she reached out and took Clara's hand. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll try." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't trust. But it was a beginning. And sometimes beginnings were enough. 2 weeks passed, and Clara began to learn the rhythm of the Hartley ranch. She learned that Samuel woke before dawn restless and hungry. That Lucy drew pictures in the frost on the windows when she thought no one was watching. That Violet talked to her rag doll in whispers, telling it stories about a mother she could barely remember. She learned that Henry worked himself to exhaustion trying to prove he was a man, and that Ruth still checked on each of her siblings 3 times every night, unable to sleep until she knew they were breathing. And she learned that Jonas Hartley watched her when he thought she wasn't looking, his gray eyes following her across rooms, lingering on her face, during meals, studying her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. Clara pretended not to notice. It was easier that way. The 3rd week of December brought a break in the weather. The snow stopped falling, the wind died down, and for 3 blessed days the sun actually appeared. Jonas decided to make a supply run to Clearwater. "We're low on everything," he said at breakfast. "Flour, sugar, coffee, medicine." "I could go with you," Clara offered. "Someone needs to stay with the children. Ruth can manage for a few hours." Jonas hesitated. Clara could see him weighing the options, calculating risks. "It's a long ride," he said finally. "Cold, even with the sun. I've survived worse. Have you—" Their eyes met across the table. Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Let her go, Pa." Ruth's voice cut through the moment. "I can handle things here." Jonas looked at his daughter, surprise flickering across his face. Ruth had never advocated for Clara before, never supported anything that might bring Clara closer to her father. Something had shifted. They all felt it. "All right," Jonas said slowly. "We leave in an hour." The ride to Clearwater took longer than Clara expected. The roads were rutted with frozen mud, the horses picking their way carefully through patches of ice. But for the first time since arriving in Wyoming, Clara didn't feel the cold. She sat beside Jonas on the wagon seat, close enough that their shoulders occasionally touched, close enough that she could smell wood smoke and leather and something distinctly him. They talked. Really talked, not just the practical exchanges of running a household. Jonas told her about meeting Ellen at a church social in Nebraska, about how she'd laughed at his attempts to dance, about how he'd proposed 3 weeks later because he couldn't imagine a life without that laugh. "She sounds wonderful," Clara said. She was. His voice was rough. "Too good for this life. Too good for me." "I don't believe that." "It's true. She deserved better than a dirt ranch in Wyoming Territory and a husband who was gone more than he was home. But she chose it. She chose you." Jonas was quiet for a moment. "Yeah, she did. Never understood why." Clara could have told him why. Could have listed the reasons any woman would choose Jonas Hartley. His strength, his steadiness, the way he loved his children with a fierce protective devotion, the way he worked himself to the bone for his family without complaint. But she kept silent. Some truths were too dangerous to speak. Clearwater was busier than Clara expected. Wagons lined the main street. People moved in and out of the general store, arms laden with packages. "Christmas," Jonas explained. "Folks stock up before the real winter sets in." Clara had forgotten. Back in Cincinnati, Christmas had been a day like any other. No family to celebrate with. No gifts to give or receive. Just another Sunday spent alone in her boarding house room. "Do you celebrate?" she asked. Ellen always made a big fuss. Decorations, a tree, presents for the children. His jaw tightened. "Haven't done much since she died." Maybe this year could be different. Jonas looked at her, something shifting in his eyes. Maybe. They climbed down from the wagon and headed toward the general store. That's when Clara saw her. A woman in a blue bonnet, the same woman who'd whispered about Clara on her first day in Clearwater. She stood outside the store talking to 2 other women, their heads bent close together. When they saw Clara and Jonas approaching, they stopped talking, straightened, put on smiles that didn't reach their eyes. "Mr. Hartley," the woman in blue said. "What a surprise." "Mrs. Thornton." Jonas's voice was flat, polite but cold. Mrs. Thornton's gaze slid to Clara. "And this must be your housekeeper." The pause before the word was deliberate, loaded. "Miss Winslow," Jonas said. "She's been helping with the children." "So I've heard." Mrs. Thornton's smile sharpened. "The whole town's been talking about it." "Have they?" A single woman living in a widower's home, caring for his children. You can understand why people might wonder. Clara felt her cheeks burn. She opened her mouth to respond, but Jonas stepped forward, putting himself between her and the women. "Let them wonder," he said quietly. "Miss Winslow is there because my children need her. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me." Mrs. Thornton's eyes widened. "I didn't mean any offense, Mr. Hartley." "Then don't give any." He took Clara's arm and guided her past the women into the store. Clara's heart pounded. She could feel the stares burning into her back. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered. "Done what?" "Defended me. It'll only make the gossip worse." "Let it." His hand was still on her arm. Warm, steady. "I don't care what they think. But I do. I don't want to cause problems for you, for the children." Jonas stopped, turned to face her. "Clara, look at me." She looked. "You're not a problem. You're the best thing that's happened to this family in 2 years. Don't let small-minded people make you believe otherwise." Clara's eyes stung. She blinked rapidly, refusing to cry in the middle of a general store. "Now," Jonas said, his voice softening, "what do you need for Christmas?" They spent an hour in the store gathering supplies, selecting small gifts for the children. A hair ribbon for Ruth, a pocket knife for Henry, a picture book for Lucy, a spinning top for Samuel, a new rag doll for Violet, And for Molly, a soft, knitted blanket in pale yellow. Clara tried to pay for some of it, but Jonas refused. "You're part of this family now. Family doesn't pay." Part of this family. The words wrapped around Clara's heart and squeezed. The ride home was quieter, but not uncomfortable. A different kind of silence. The kind that happens between people who don't need words to fill the space. They were almost back to the ranch when Jonas spoke. "I've been thinking." "About what?" He stared ahead at the road, his jaw working. "About what Mrs. Thornton said. About how people talk." Clara's stomach dropped. Here it came. He'd realized the gossip was too damaging. He'd ask her to leave. "She's not wrong," Jonas continued. "Having you there unmarried living in my house, it raises questions." "I understand." Clara kept her voice steady, even as her heart cracked. "I can find somewhere else. A boarding house in town, maybe. I could still come during the day to help with—" "That's not what I meant." She stopped. "Then what?" Jonas pulled the horses to a halt, turned to face her fully. "I meant maybe we should give them something else to talk about." Clara stared at him. "I don't understand." "Marry me." The world stopped. "What?" "Marry me, Clara. Not for love. I know it's too soon for that. But for the children. For practicality. For—" He faltered. "For whatever we're building here." Clara couldn't breathe. "Jonas." "I know I'm not much. A worn-out rancher with 6 children and a dead wife's ghost in every room. I know you could do better. But I'm asking anyway because you're the first person since Ellen who's made me feel like maybe things could be all right again." Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. She didn't bother wiping them away. "You don't want me," she whispered. "You don't know what you're asking." "I know exactly what I'm asking." "No, you don't." Clara's voice broke. "I can't give you children, Jonas. I can't give you sons to work the ranch or daughters to fill your home with laughter. I'm broken. Empty. What kind of wife would that make me?" Jonas reached out, took her face in his hands. His palms were rough against her cheeks, his thumbs catching her tears. "I don't need more children. I've got 6 already in case you hadn't noticed." A laugh escaped her, wet and broken. "I need a partner," he continued. "Someone to stand beside me. Someone who loves my children and won't run when things get hard. I need you, Clara. Just you. Exactly as you are." "You can't mean that." "I do." His eyes held hers. "Tell me you don't feel anything. Tell me this is just a job to you, and I'll never mention it again. But if there's even a chance—" Clara closed her eyes. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to protect herself, to refuse before she could be hurt again. But she was so tired of running. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." Jonas's face transformed. The weariness lifted. The grief retreated. For one shining moment, he looked like the man he must have been before loss had carved him hollow. He kissed her, right there on the frozen road, with the horses stamping impatiently and the winter sun sinking toward the horizon. It was brief, gentle, a promise more than a passion. When he pulled back, Clara was trembling. "We should get home," Jonas said, his voice rough, "before the children send out a search party." Clara nodded, unable to speak. They drove the rest of the way in stunned silence, both of them reeling from what had just happened. When the ranch came into view, Clara saw Ruth standing on the porch. Even from a distance, she could see the tension in the girl's posture. "Something's wrong," Clara said. Jonas urged the horses faster. Ruth met them at the wagon, her face white. "It's Molly. She won't stop crying. She's burning up." Clara was off the wagon before it stopped moving. She ran into the house following the sound of a child's wails. Molly lay in Ruth's bed, her small body twisted with discomfort, her cheeks flushed an angry red. When Clara touched her forehead, heat seared her palm. How long has she been like this? It started right after you left. I thought it was just fussiness, but then she got hot, and she won't eat, and she keeps pulling at her ear and... It's all right. You did right to watch her. Clara kept her voice calm, even as fear clawed at her chest. Jonas. He appeared in the doorway, his face gray. She needs a doctor. Nearest one's in Clearwater. 2 hours there, 2 hours back. By the time I get him here? Then go, now. Jonas hesitated, torn. I can't leave you alone. The children. If something happens... Nothing's going to happen. I'll take care of her. You get the doctor. Clara. Go. He went. Clara heard the wagon rattling away, heard the thunder of hooves pushing the horses faster than was safe. She turned back to Molly. All right, little one. It's just you and me now. Let's figure out what's wrong. The next hours were the longest of Clara's life. She stripped Molly down to her underclothes, bathed her with cool water, dribbled sips of water between cracked lips, sang songs, told stories, did everything she could think of to keep the fever from climbing higher. Ruth hovered in the doorway, her face stricken. Is she going to die? No. Clara said it with more conviction than she felt. I won't let her. That's what Mama said. Before Molly came, she said she'd be fine. Clara looked at the terrified girl. Ruth, I need you to be strong right now, for your brothers and sisters. Can you do that? Ruth swallowed hard, nodded. Keep them busy. Keep them downstairs. Don't let them come up here and see this. But, go, please. Ruth went. Clara turned back to Molly, whose cries had weakened to whimpers, whose little body shook with chills, despite the fever raging inside her. Don't you dare, Clara whispered fiercely. Don't you dare leave us. Your father needs you. Your brothers and sisters need you. I need you. Molly's eyes fluttered open, glassy with fever, but for a moment focused. Mama. Clara's heart shattered. No, sweetheart, it's Clara. But I'm here. I'm right here. Want Mama? I know. I know you do. Tears streamed down Clara's face. But Mama can't come, so you're stuck with me. And I'm not going anywhere. Do you hear me? I'm not going anywhere. Molly's eyes closed. Her breathing was shallow, rapid. Clara prayed. For the first time in years, she actually prayed. The doctor arrived just before midnight. Clara heard the wagon, heard Jonas's boots on the stairs, heard voices in the hallway. Then a gray-haired man with kind eyes was pushing past her, setting down a black bag, bending over Molly. How long? Since afternoon. 10 hours, maybe more. The doctor examined the child quickly, efficiently. Checked her ears, her throat, her chest. Ear infection, he said finally. A bad one. The fever's high, but it's not consumption or pneumonia. Clara nearly collapsed with relief. I've got medicine. We'll start her on it tonight. Keep her cool, keep her hydrated. The worst should pass by morning. She'll be all right. Children are resilient, miss. She'll pull through. Jonas appeared beside Clara, his hand finding hers. Thank God, he breathed. Thank your woman here, the doctor said. The cool baths kept the fever from climbing too high. Another hour without intervention, and we might be having a different conversation. Jonas looked at Clara. In his eyes she saw gratitude so deep it took her breath away. You saved her, he said. I just did what needed doing. You saved my daughter. Clara's legs finally gave out. Jonas caught her, pulled her against his chest, held her while she shook. It's all right, he murmured into her hair. It's over. She's going to be fine. But Clara couldn't stop shaking. The terror she'd held at bay for hours came flooding out, and all she could do was cling to Jonas and sob. She stayed with Molly through the night. Jonas sat beside her, neither of them speaking, just watching the little girl's chest rise and fall. By dawn, the fever had broken. Molly's cheeks were still flushed, but the angry red had faded. Her breathing was deep and even. Clara slumped back in her chair, exhausted beyond words. You should sleep, Jonas said. Can't. Need to watch her. Clara, she's out of danger. The doctor said so. I know, but I can't. I can't leave her. Jonas was quiet for a moment. Then he did something that surprised her. He lifted her out of her chair, carried her to the small couch against the wall, and laid her down. Covered her with a blanket. Sleep, he said. I'll watch them both. Both. Molly, and you. Someone has to make sure you're still breathing. Clara's eyes were already closing. That's not funny. Wasn't trying to be funny. She felt his hand brush her hair back from her face, gentle, reverent. You're going to marry me, he said quietly, almost to himself. When this is over. When she's better. We're going to stand in front of a preacher and make this official. Okay, Clara murmured, already half asleep. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it. Clara smiled. Okay. She slept. When she woke, sunlight was streaming through the window, and Molly was sitting up in bed asking for breakfast. The other children came flooding in, crowding around their baby sister, touching her face, holding her hands, making sure she was real and alive. Ruth stood apart, watching. When Clara caught her eye, the girl nodded once. Thank you, the nod said. For saving her. For staying. For being here when it mattered. Clara nodded back. Later that morning, after Molly had eaten and fallen back asleep after the other children had been fed and settled, Jonas found Clara in the kitchen. Ruth told me what you said to her. That night Molly got sick. Clara stiffened. What did she tell you? That you told her you wouldn't let Molly die. That you said you needed her. I did say that. Did you mean it? Clara turned to face him. Which part? All of it. She took a breath. Yes, I meant all of it. Jonas moved closer. Clara, I know what I asked you yesterday was sudden. If you've changed your mind, I haven't. You've had time to think, time to realize what you'd be taking on. 6 children, a ranch that barely survives, a husband who still dreams about his dead wife. Jonas, I wouldn't blame you for walking away, for wanting something easier. Clara reached up and touched his face. His beard was rough under her fingers. His eyes were tired. He looked like a man who'd spent his whole life bracing for disappointment. I don't want easier, she said. I want this. I want you. I want Ruth's stubbornness and Henry's determination and Lucy's quiet heart. I want Samuel's wildness and Violet's shyness and Molly's... Molly's what? Clara smiled through her tears. Molly called me Mama last night, when the fever was high. She looked at me, and she called me Mama. Jonas's breath caught. I know I'm not, Clara continued. I know I can never replace Ellen. But last night for one moment that little girl saw me, and she saw someone who could be her mother. And I want to be that. For all of them. If you'll let me. Jonas kissed her. Not gently this time. Not a promise. This was fire. This was need. This was 2 broken people finding something whole in each other. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Clara laughed. The children might see. Let them. But he stepped back anyway, his hands lingering on her waist. We'll tell them tonight. About the wedding. Tonight? Unless you want to wait. Clara shook her head. I've waited my whole life, Jonas. I don't want to wait anymore. They told the children at supper. The reactions were varied. Samuel cheered and asked if this meant Clara would never leave. Lucy smiled that rare, precious smile and went back to her drawing. Violet looked confused until Ruth explained. Then she nodded solemnly and said she was glad. Henry was quiet, watching Jonas with an unreadable expression. When the announcement was done, he stood and offered Jonas his hand. Congratulations, Pa. Jonas shook it man to man. Thank you, son. And Ruth, Ruth sat very still, her face carefully blank. Clara braced herself. "Ruth, are you all right?" For a long moment, Ruth didn't answer. Then she stood, walked around the table, and stopped in front of Clara. "You stayed," she said quietly. "When Molly was sick, you could have run. Most people would have. But you stayed and you fought for her." "Of course I did. Mama would have done the same thing." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I'm not ready to call you Mama," Ruth continued. "Maybe I'll never be ready. But I'm glad you're staying. I'm glad you're going to be part of this family." She hugged Clara. Brief and awkward and over almost before it began. But it was enough. The wedding was set for New Year's Day. Clara spent the week between Christmas and the wedding in a daze, scarcely believing any of it was real. Christmas came and went in a flurry of gifts and laughter, and the first real joy the Hartley house had seen in 2 years. The children tore into their presents with abandon. Ruth cried when she opened the hair ribbon. Henry carried the pocket knife in his pocket like a talisman. And Molly recovered and rosy-cheeked totted around in her new yellow blanket, babbling happily, reaching for Clara whenever she came near. On Christmas night, after the children were in bed, Jonas and Clara sat by the fire. "I have something for you," he said. "Jonas, you didn't have to." He pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside, on a bed of worn velvet, lay a ring. Simple. Gold. Set with a small blue stone. "It was my mother's. She gave it to me before she died. Told me to give it to someone worthy." Clara couldn't speak. "Ellen wore it for 12 years. I kept it after she passed. Couldn't bear to look at it." "Jonas, if this is too hard." "It's not." He took her hand, slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Ellen would have wanted this. She would have wanted someone to love those children after she was gone. She would have wanted me to be happy. "And are you happy?" Jonas looked at her, really looked. And in his eyes, Clara saw something she'd never expected to see again. Hope. "I'm getting there," he said. Clara leaned in and kissed him. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, the fire crackled. And for the first time in years, Clara Winslow felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. But fate, as it turned out, had other plans. 3 days before the wedding, a stranger rode up to the Hartley ranch. Clara saw him from the kitchen window. A tall man on a black horse dressed too fine for Wyoming Territory, his coat too clean, his boots too polished. Something cold settled in her stomach. She met him at the door before he could knock. "Can I help you?" The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "I'm looking for Clara Winslow." "Who's asking?" "My name is Thomas Reed. I'm here on behalf of my client, Mr. William Ashford." The cold spread ice in her veins. William. Her William. The man who'd broken her heart and married another. What does William want? Thomas Reed's smile widened. His wife passed away 3 months ago. Childbed fever. The baby didn't survive either. Clara said nothing. "Mr. Ashford has been searching for you ever since. He wants you back, Miss Winslow. He says he made a terrible mistake. He says he never stopped loving you." Behind her, Clara heard footsteps. Jonas, coming to see who was at the door. "Miss Winslow," Thomas Reed pressed. "Mr. Ashford is a wealthy man. He can give you anything you want, a life of comfort, security, everything you've been denied." Jonas appeared at Clara's shoulder. His face was stone. "What's going on?" Clara turned to face him. In his eyes, she saw fear, the same fear she'd seen the night Molly was sick, the fear of losing something precious. "Nothing," she said. "This man was just leaving." "Miss Winslow, tell William I'm dead." Clara's voice was steady. "Tell him whatever you need to, but I'm not going back. Not now, not ever. You're making a mistake. Mr. Ashford is wealthy, influential, and I'm getting married in 3 days to a man worth 10 of him." She stepped back. closed the door in Thomas Reed's face. For a long moment, the only sound was Clara's ragged breathing. Then Jonas spoke. "Clara, who is William Ashford?" She closed her eyes. "The man who destroyed me," she said. "And the last person I ever expected to come back." Jonas didn't move. His face was carved from granite, his eyes fixed on Clara with an intensity that made her want to run. "Tell me," he said. "All of it." Clara's hands trembled. She clasped them together, willing them to still. "William Ashford was my fiancé. For 3 years. We were supposed to be married. What happened? I got sick. The fever. When I recovered, the doctor told me I couldn't have children." Clara's voice cracked. "I told William. I thought he loved me enough that it wouldn't matter. But it did. His mother told him to find someone else. Someone who could give him heirs. He listened." Jonas's jaw tightened. "He left you because you couldn't breed." "He married another woman within 2 months. Margaret Palmer. Beautiful. Wealthy. Young. And now she's dead." Clara nodded. "And apparently he wants me back." The silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. "Do you still love him?" Clara's head snapped up. "What?" "It's a simple question, Clara. Do you still love him?" "No." The word came out fierce, absolute. "I stopped loving William Ashford the day he looked at me like I was damaged goods. I stopped loving him when he married someone else, while I was still picking up the pieces of my life." "Then why do you look so scared?" Clara's breath caught. Because Jonas saw her. Really saw her. All the way down to the parts she tried to hide. "Because I spent years believing I wasn't enough. That no man would want me. That I was broken beyond repair." Her voice shook. "And then I came here, and I found you. And for the first time in my life, I felt like maybe I could be whole again. And now he's back, and I'm terrified that somehow, someway he'll ruin this too." Jonas crossed the room in 3 strides. His hands cupped her face, tilting it up to meet his eyes. "Listen to me. Are you listening?" "Yes." "William Ashford doesn't get to ruin anything. Not this. Not us. You're not the woman he threw away anymore. You're stronger than that. Better than that." "Jonas. You saved my daughter's life. You brought my family back together. You made Ruth smile for the first time in 2 years. That's who you are now. That's who you've always been. And some rich fool from back east doesn't get to change that." Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. "What if he doesn't give up? What if he keeps coming back? Then I'll deal with him. You don't understand. William has money, power, connections. He could make things very difficult for us." "Let him try." Jonas's voice was steel. "This is my land. My family. My woman. He wants to take what's mine. He'll have to go through me first." Clara pressed her forehead against his chest, breathing in the scent of him, letting his steadiness anchor her. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have told you about him before." "Doesn't matter." "It does. You deserve to know what you were getting into." Jonas tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I know exactly what I'm getting into. A woman who crossed 2,000 miles to help strangers. A woman who sat up all night with a sick child who wasn't hers. A woman who's too stubborn to quit and too scared to believe she deserves to be happy. That's not, it is, and I love every damn bit of it." Clara's heart stopped. "What did you say?" Jonas went still. The words hung between them, unexpected, unplanned. "I love you," he said, quieter now. "I didn't mean to. Didn't think I could after Ellen. But there it is." Clara couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "You don't have to say it back. I know it's too soon. I know you're scared. But I wanted you to know before all of this with Ashford that whatever happens, whatever he tries, you're not alone. Not anymore." She kissed him, hard and desperate, pouring everything she couldn't say into the press of her lips against his. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Clara looked up at him with wet eyes. "I love you too," she said. God help me. I love you too. The next 2 days were a blur of wedding preparations and constant vigilance. Jonas rode out every morning, checking the property lines, watching for any sign of Thomas Reed or anyone else who might be working for William Ashford. Clara threw herself into the preparations. Ruth helped her earlier resistance transformed into quiet determination. They baked bread for the reception, mended Clara's best dress, made plans for the small ceremony at the Clearwater Church. But underneath the activity, tension coiled like a rattlesnake waiting to strike. On the morning before the wedding, Samuel came running into the kitchen. "There's a man coming on the road." Clara's blood went cold. She walked to the window, Ruth close behind her. A single rider approached, but this time there was no mistaking who it was. William Ashford had come himself. He looked older than Clara remembered. His dark hair was shot through with gray, his handsome face lined with something that might have been grief, or might have been just the passage of time. He dismounted with the easy grace of a man who'd spent his life in comfortable stables, handing his horse's reins to no one in particular, as if servants would materialize from thin air. Clara stepped onto the porch before he could reach the door. "William." He stopped, stared at her. Something flickered in his eyes, something that looked almost like wonder. "Clara, you look different." "I am different." "You're more beautiful than I remembered." "Don't." "Don't what?" "Don't try to charm me. It won't work." William's smile faltered. "I see the years have made you harder." "The years no, William. You made me harder. You and your mother and your precious need for heirs." "Clara, please. I came all this way." "I didn't ask you to come. I don't want you here." "Just give me 5 minutes. Let me explain." "Explain what?" "How you threw me away like garbage the moment you learned I couldn't give you children. How you married another woman while I was still crying myself to sleep every night. What could you possibly say that would make any of that better?" William's face twisted. "I was wrong. I know that now. I was young and stupid, and I let my mother convince me that bloodlines mattered more than love. And now that Margaret's dead, suddenly, you've seen the error of your ways." "It's not like that." "Then what's it like, William? Tell me. I'm dying to know." He took a step closer. Clara held her ground. "I never stopped loving you," he said. "Not for a single day. Every morning I woke up next to Margaret, I thought of you. Every night I closed my eyes, I saw your face. That must have been very uncomfortable for your wife." "Clara, she's dead, William. She died giving you the child you wanted so badly, the child that killed her. Was it worth it?" William flinched as if she'd slapped him. "The baby died too," he said quietly. "A boy. He lived for 3 hours. I held him as he took his last breath." Clara felt nothing. She waited for sympathy, for compassion, for some flicker of the love she'd once felt. But there was only emptiness where William Ashford used to live. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said. "Truly, no one should have to bury a child." "Then you understand. I understand that you've experienced tragedy, but that doesn't change what you did to me. It doesn't erase the years I spent believing I was worthless, and it certainly doesn't give you the right to show up here and expect me to fall into your arms. I'm offering you everything, Clara. Wealth, security, a life of comfort. You'd never have to work another day. I don't want your money." "Then what do you want?" Clara pointed toward the barn where Jonas had just appeared leading 2 horses. "I want him. I want his children. I want this life hard as it is because it's real. Because I earned it. Because the man in that barn looks at me like I'm everything, not like I'm a broodmare who failed to perform." William's face hardened. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe, but it's my mistake to make." Jonas walked toward them, his pace unhurried but his eyes sharp. He stopped beside Clara, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Mr. Ashford, I presume." "Mr. Hartley." "I believe Clara's made her position clear. Is there anything else you need?" William's jaw tightened. I came a long way. I'm not leaving without her. That's not your choice. Everything has a price, Mr. Hartley. Name yours. The air went still. Jonas smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a man who'd survived wars and winters and wolves, and wasn't about to be intimidated by a soft-handed Easterner. My price. He stepped forward, putting himself between William and Clara. My price is that you get back on your fancy horse ride back to whatever city you crawled out of, and never come near my family again. Your family? She's not your wife yet. She will be tomorrow. And those children in that house, they're already calling her Mama. So unless you want to explain to 6 young ones why you're trying to take their mother away, I suggest you leave. William's face flushed with anger. You can't seriously think you can give her what I can. Look at this place. Look at you. You're barely surviving out here. Maybe, but we're surviving together, and that's worth more than all your money. Clara. William turned to her, desperation creeping into his voice. Please, don't do this. Don't throw your life away on some dirt farmer who can't even keep his cattle alive in winter. Clara stepped out from behind Jonas. You still don't understand, do you? Her voice was quiet, but it carried. You think this is about choosing between comfort and hardship, between money and poverty, but it's not. Then what is it about? It's about choosing between someone who saw me as a means to an end and someone who sees me as a person. It's about choosing between a man who left me at my lowest and a man who asked me to stay at his. I made a mistake. You made a choice. So did I. Clara took Jonas's hand. And I choose him. I choose this family. I choose this life, and nothing you can say or do will change that. William stared at her for a long moment. Then something in his expression shifted. The desperation faded, replaced by something colder. Calculating. Fine, he said. Keep your rancher. Keep your dirt and your poverty and your borrowed children. But remember this, Clara, when it all falls apart, when you're old and tired and wondering what could have been, don't come crying to me. I won't. Because I won't take you back. Not after this humiliation. I'm counting on it. William mounted his horse, looked down at them with something that might have been hatred, or might have been heartbreak. It was hard to tell with men like him. You'll regret this, he said. No, Clara replied. I don't think I will. He rode away without looking back. Clara watched until he disappeared over the ridge, until she was sure he was really gone. Then her legs gave out. Jonas caught her before she hit the ground, sweeping her up, carrying her to the porch steps. Breathe, he said. Just breathe. I did it. I actually did it. You did. I told him no. I told him I didn't want him. You did more than that. You told him who you are, who you've become. Clara laughed a wild, half-hysterical sound. I can't believe he came all this way. I can't believe he thought I'd actually go with him. Some men can't accept that they've lost. He didn't lose me, Jonas. He threw me away. There's a difference. Jonas pulled her close, pressing his lips to her hair. His loss. My gain. They sat on the porch steps until Clara stopped shaking. Until her breathing steadied. Until the fear and anger and residual grief finally loosened their grip on her chest. Tomorrow, Jonas said. Tomorrow. You'll be my wife. And you'll be my husband. No second thoughts. Clara turned to look at him. This man, this worn, weary, wonderful man, who'd offered her everything she'd ever wanted without even knowing it. No second thoughts, she said. Not a single one. That night Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in her narrow bed in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind howl outside. Tomorrow she would stand before God and witnesses and promise to love this man for the rest of her life. Tomorrow she would become Clara Hartley. Tomorrow everything would change. A soft knock at the door made her sit up. Come in. Ruth slipped through the door, a candle in her hand, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. "Can't sleep either?" Clara asked. Ruth shook her head. She crossed the room and sat on the edge of Clara's bed, something she'd never done before. "I need to tell you something," Ruth said, "before tomorrow." "What is it?" Ruth was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "When Pa first told me he'd sent for someone to help, I hated you before you even arrived. I hated the idea of you. Another woman in Mama's kitchen. Another woman raising Mama's children. I know. I wanted you to fail. I wanted you to be terrible, so Pa would send you away, and everything could go back to the way it was." "Ruth, let me finish, please." Clara nodded. "But you didn't fail. You came into this house, and you worked harder than anyone I've ever seen. You didn't try to replace Mama. You didn't pretend everything was fine. You just showed up. Every day. For every one of us." Tears burned in Clara's eyes. "And when Molly got sick," Ruth's voice broke. "When Molly got sick, you didn't run. You stayed. You fought for her like she was your own." "She is my own. All of you are." Ruth looked up, a tears streaming down her face. "I want you to know that I'm glad you're marrying Pa. I'm glad you're going to be part of this family for real. And I'm sorry for how I treated you, for all the mean things I said and thought." Clara pulled the girl into her arms. "You don't have to apologize," she whispered. "You were protecting your family. That's nothing to be ashamed of. I was wrong about you. Maybe. But you were also right to be careful. A stranger showing up to raise your siblings? That's scary. You had every right to be suspicious." Ruth clung to her, crying like the child she still was. The child she'd been forced to stop being too soon. "I miss Mama," Ruth said, her voice muffled against Clara's shoulder. "I still miss her every day." "I know, sweetheart. That's okay. You'll always miss her. She was your mother." "But I love you too. Is that wrong to love you both?" Clara's heart swelled until she thought it might burst. "That's not wrong at all. Your heart is big enough for both of us, for all of us." Ruth pulled back, wiping her face with her sleeve. Will you do my hair tomorrow for the wedding?" It was such a small request, and yet it meant everything. "I would be honored." Ruth smiled, a real smile, the first one Clara had seen from her. "Thank you, Clara, for everything." "Thank you, Ruth, for letting me in." Ruth slipped out as quietly as she'd come, and Clara lay back down, her heart full to bursting. Tomorrow, she would marry Jonas Hartley. Tomorrow, she would become a mother to 6 children who needed her. Tomorrow, her life would truly begin. But tomorrow came with a complication no one had expected. Clara woke to Henry pounding on her door. "Clara, Clara, wake up! It's Pa." She was out of bed in seconds, throwing on her robe, yanking open the door. "What's wrong? What happened?" Henry's face was white. "He went out to check on the horses this morning. One of them kicked him. He's hurt bad." Clara ran. She found Jonas in his barn, propped against a hay bale, his face gray with pain. His left arm hung at an unnatural angle, and blood seeped through his shirt from a gash on his forehead. "It's not as bad as it looks," he said through gritted teeth. "Don't talk. Let me see." She knelt beside him, assessing the damage. The arm was broken, that much was clear. The head wound was shallow, but bleeding freely. "We need to get you inside. Henry, help me." Together they got Jonas to his feet. He leaned heavily on Henry, his face contorted with pain, but he didn't cry out. They laid him on the couch in the main room. Clara sent Henry for clean water and bandages while she examined the arm. "It's broken," she confirmed. "We need a doctor." "No time." Jonas grabbed her hand with his good one. "The wedding's in 4 hours." "Jonas, I'm not postponing it. I've waited long enough to make you my wife." "You can barely stand? Then I'll sit, or lie down. I don't care. But today, Clara Winslow, you're becoming Clara Hartley, even if I have to crawl down the aisle to make it happen." Clara stared at him. This impossible, stubborn, wonderful man. "You're insane." "Probably. Is that a problem?" She laughed despite herself. "I suppose I should have expected this." "Probably." She cleaned his wounds, set his arm as best she could, using skills she'd learned from a book years ago and never thought she'd need. Wrapped his ribs, which were bruised but not broken. Through it all, Jonas didn't complain. Didn't ask for whiskey or anything to dull the pain. Just watched her with those gray eyes that saw everything. "You're good at this," he said. "I read a lot." "Lucky for me." When she finished, Jonas caught her hand. "Clara, if you want to wait, if this is too much, don't you dare." She gripped his fingers tight. "You said we were getting married today. We're getting married today. Even if I have to carry you to the church myself." Jonas smiled that rare, beautiful smile that transformed his tired face. "I love you. I love you too. Now rest. You've got a wedding to attend." 4 hours later, Clara Winslow stood at the back of the Clearwater Church, her heart pounding, her hands shaking around a bouquet of winter wildflowers Ruth had somehow found. The children were already inside. Ruth in her best dress, with her hair done up in the style Clara had promised. Henry trying to look solemn and grown up. Lucy clutching a prayer book. Samuel bouncing with barely contained energy. Violet holding Molly's hand, both of them in matching ribbons. Jonas stood at the altar, his arm in a sling, his face still pale from pain but standing, on his own 2 feet, waiting for her. The church was small, barely half filled. A few ranchers from neighboring properties. The doctor who'd saved Molly. Father O'Brien, who'd agreed to perform the ceremony with only 2 days' notice. And Mrs. Thornton sitting in the back row, her face sour with disapproval. Clara squared her shoulders and walked down the aisle. Every step felt like a mile. Every heartbeat felt like thunder. But she kept her eyes on Jonas, on his smile, on the love shining in his face. When she reached him, he took her hand. "You came," he said softly. "Wild horses couldn't have kept me away. I love you, Clara. I love you too. Now let's get married before you fall over." The ceremony was short, simple, perfect. They exchanged vows that had been spoken by thousands before them, but felt brand new on their lips. They exchanged rings, Jonas's mother's ring warm on Clara's finger, a simple band she'd bought in Clearwater sliding onto his. And when Father O'Brien said, "You may kiss the bride," Jonas pulled her close with his good arm and kissed her like she was the only woman in the world. The children cheered, even Ruth, and Clara Hartley, née Winslow, finally let herself believe that happiness wasn't just for other people, it was for her too. The celebration afterward was modest but joyful, food and laughter and children running wild through the churchyard despite the cold. Clara stood apart for a moment watching her new family, marveling at how much had changed in just a few weeks. Ruth approached Molly on her hip. "Mrs. Hartley," Ruth said, a smile playing at her lips. "That's going to take some getting used to." "You'll manage." Molly reached for Clara, her chubby arms outstretched. "Mama." Clara took her, settling the toddler on her hip with practiced ease. "She called me Mama again. She has been for days, whenever you're not around." Ruth's expression softened. "We all have." "What?" "Violet asked me this morning if she could call you Mama. Samuel's been doing it in his head for weeks, even Lucy." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Ruth, I'm not ready yet, but the others are, if that's okay with you." "Of course it's okay, it's more than okay, it's everything." Ruth nodded once, that familiar brisk nod that meant the conversation was over. But as she walked away, Clara saw her wipe her eyes. Jonas found her a few minutes later, his face pale but happy. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Hartley?" "More than ready." He helped her into the wagon, wincing as the movement jarred his broken arm. "You should have let the doctor give you something for the pain." Didn't want to be foggy. Not today. Stubborn man. You're stubborn man now. Clara laughed and leaned against his shoulder as the wagon rolled toward home. Toward the ranch that was now hers. Toward the family that was now hers. Toward a future she'd never dared to imagine. That night, after the children were in bed, after the house had finally gone quiet, Clara and Jonas sat together by the fire. His arm was splinted and bound. His head bandaged his body, battered and bruised. But he was smiling. "Hell of a wedding day," he said. "I wouldn't have had it any other way." Liar. Okay, maybe I would have preferred you without the broken arm. Noted. No more horse kicks before major life events. Clara laughed and rested her head on his shoulder. Thank you, Jonas. For what? For seeing me, for wanting me, for choosing me when you could have had anyone. Anyone, he snorted. Clara, I'm a broke rancher with 6 children and a dead wife's ghost. The line of eligible women wasn't exactly forming at my door. Their loss. Your gain. Don't I know it? They sat in comfortable silence, watching the flames dance. I never thought I'd have this, Clara said quietly. A home. A family. Someone who loves me. You have all of it now. I know. It's terrifying. Jonas turned to look at her. Why terrifying? Because I could lose it. All of it. In a heartbeat. You won't. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise that whatever happens, we'll face it together. That's what family means, Clara. It means you're not alone anymore. Clara's tears fell freely now. I love you so much it scares me. Good. Jonas kissed her forehead. Because I love you so much it scares me too. We'll be scared together. Outside, the wind picked up howling around the corners of the house. Inside, Clara Hartley sat with her husband, her children sleeping safely upstairs, her heart fuller than she'd ever thought possible. She'd come to Wyoming Territory broken and alone, expecting nothing, hoping for less. She'd found everything. And she would spend the rest of her life fighting to keep it. Winter deepened its grip on Wyoming Territory, and the Hartley Ranch settled into a rhythm Clara had never known she craved. She woke each morning before dawn, her body curved against Jonas's warmth, listening to the house breathe around her. The creak of old wood, the whisper of wind against windows, the soft sounds of children stirring in their beds. This was home now. Her home. Jonas's arm healed slowly, the bone knitting back together under Clara's careful attention. He chafed at the restrictions at having to watch Henry do work he should have been doing himself, but he didn't complain. You married a stubborn woman, Clara reminded him when he tried to lift a feed bucket one-handed. Don't test me. Wouldn't dream of it. But his eyes said otherwise, and Clara found herself smiling more in those winter weeks than she had in years. The children bloomed under her care. Samuel's wildness found direction. Lucy began talking more, sharing her drawings with Clara each evening. Violet stopped sucking her thumb. Henry stood taller, more confident, no longer carrying the weight of being the man of the house alone. And Molly. Sweet Molly, who had never known her birth mother's touch, who called Clara Mama 100 times a day, who reached for her with absolute trust. Ruth remained the hardest to reach. Not hostile anymore, not distant but careful, always watching, always measuring. Clara understood. Some wounds took longer to heal. 3 weeks after the wedding, the weather broke. The endless gray gave way to brilliant blue skies and temperatures that almost felt warm. Jonas declared it a perfect day for a supply run. His arm was out of the sling, now still weak but functional. I want to go, Henry said immediately. Me too. Samuel bounced on his heels. You're both staying here. Jonas's tone brooked no argument. I need you to watch over things while I'm gone. Henry's face fell. But Pa, no buts. Clara needs help with the livestock. Can I count on you? The question transformed Henry's disappointment into determination. Yes, sir. Good man. Clara walked Jonas to the wagon, her breath misting in the cold air. Be careful, she said. Always am. That's a lie, and we both know it. Jonas grinned and pulled her close, kissing her thoroughly, despite the children watching from the window. I'll be back before dark, he promised. You'd better be. She watched the wagon until it disappeared over the ridge, an uneasy feeling settling in her stomach that she couldn't quite name. The day passed quietly. Clara kept the children busy with chores and lessons. Henry proved himself capable with the livestock, earning silent praise from Clara that made him stand even taller. By late afternoon, the uneasy feeling had grown into full-blown anxiety. He should be back by now. Clara murmured more to herself than anyone else. Ruth appeared at her elbow. The roads might be bad, or he might have had to wait for supplies. Maybe. He'll be fine. Pa always comes back. But Ruth's eyes betrayed her own worry, and Clara felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on her shoulders. The sun began to set. Still no sign of Jonas. Clara made supper, but no one ate much. The children kept glancing at the window at the door at each other. I'm sure he's fine, Clara said for the 10th time. He probably just got delayed. Should we go look for him? Henry asked. No, it's getting dark and I'm not risking anyone else out there. But what if he's hurt? What if the wagon broke down? What if... Henry! Clara knelt in front of him, taking his hands. I know you're scared. I am too. But your father is the strongest man I know. He survived the war. He survived losing your mother. He can survive a supply run. You don't know that. No, I don't. But I believe it. And right now, belief is all we have. She sent the children to bed, though she knew none of them would sleep. She sat by the window wrapped in a quilt, watching the darkness outside. Midnight came and went. Then 1 o'clock. Then 2. At 2:30 in the morning, Clara heard hoofbeats. She was on her feet and out the door before her mind caught up with her body running toward the sound, her heart pounding. Jonas rode into the yard on a horse that wasn't his face ashen, his coat torn. Jonas! She caught him as he half fell from the saddle, his weight nearly taking her down. What happened? Where's the wagon? Where are the horses? Bandits. His voice was hoarse. About 5 miles out of Clearwater. 3 of them. Took everything. Are you hurt? Cracked rib, maybe. They worked me over pretty good before they left me on the road. Clara's blood ran cold. They beat you. Wanted to know if I had money hidden somewhere. I didn't. Made them angry. She helped him inside, easing him onto the couch, lighting lamps, examining his injuries. His face was bruised, one eye swelling shut. His ribs were indeed cracked, she could tell by the way he winced when she touched them. His wrists were raw from being bound. I'll kill them, Clara said, her voice shaking with fury. I'll find them and I'll kill them. Clara! They could have killed you. They beat you and left you on the road in winter, and you could have frozen to death. But I didn't. That's not the point. Jonas caught her hand, stilling her frantic movements. The point is, I'm here. I'm alive. The rest is just things. Things can be replaced. You can't. Neither can you. He pulled her closer, wincing at the movement. When they had me tied up, all I could think about was you. About the children. About not getting to see Ruth grow up, or Henry become a man, or Molly take her first real steps. Tears streamed down Clara's face. Don't talk like that. I'm not going anywhere. You hear me? I promised you forever and I meant it. She collapsed against him, careful of his injuries, crying like she hadn't cried since her parents died. I thought I'd lost you, she sobbed. I know. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, just don't leave me. Never. They stayed like that until the children came thundering down the stairs, drawn by the noise, their faces shifting from terror to relief when they saw their father. Pa! Suddenly there were bodies everywhere, children piling onto the couch, touching Jonas's face, holding his hands, reassuring themselves that he was real. "Easy," Clara warned. "He's hurt." "How bad?" Ruth's voice was steady, but her face was white. "Cracked ribs, bruises. He'll mend." "What happened?" Jonas told them, editing the worst parts, but the children understood enough. Their father had been attacked, had nearly died, had come home against all odds. "We should go after them," Henry said fiercely. "Make them pay." "No." "But Pa..." "I said no." Jonas's voice was firm, despite his exhaustion. "Vengeance isn't worth dying for. We got what matters. We got each other." Henry wanted to argue. Clara could see it in his eyes, but he held his tongue. "Everyone back to bed," Clara ordered. "Your father needs rest. We'll talk more in the morning." The children dispersed reluctantly, each one touching Jonas one more time before they left, as if to make sure he wouldn't disappear. Ruth lingered in the doorway. "Clara." "Yes." "Thank you for being here, for holding things together." "That's what family does." Ruth nodded once and vanished up the stairs. Clara turned back to Jonas. "Can you make it upstairs?" "Probably not." "Then we'll sleep here, together." She retrieved blankets and pillows, made a nest on the floor beside the couch, and curled up next to her husband. "This isn't exactly how I pictured married life," Jonas said wryly. "No. I thought there'd be less blood." Clara laughed despite herself. "At least we're never bored." True enough. They fell asleep holding hands, and for the first time since she'd watched Jonas ride away that morning, Clara felt the knot in her chest begin to loosen. The next weeks were hard. Jonas couldn't work, not with cracked ribs, not with the bone-deep exhaustion that came from being beaten and left for dead. Clara took over with Henry's help, managing the livestock, the repairs, the 100 small tasks that kept a ranch alive. Her hands cracked and bled from the cold. Her back ached from work she'd never been trained for. More than once, she collapsed into bed so exhausted she couldn't move. But she didn't complain. Not once. This was her family now, her responsibility, and she would die before she let them down. Ruth surprised everyone by stepping up, not just with the children, but with the ranch work. She mucked stalls and hauled water and helped Henry mend fences. "You don't have to do this," Clara told her one evening, watching the girl clean manure from her boots. "Yes, I do." "Ruth, when Pa was gone, I kept thinking about what would happen if he didn't come back. Who would take care of us? Who would keep us together?" Ruth looked up, her eyes fierce. "And I realized it would be you. You would have kept us together, no matter what." "Of course I would have." "I know. That's why I'm doing this. Because you're not in this alone either." Clara's eyes stung. "When did you grow up?" "Somewhere between Mama dying and you showing up. I just didn't realize it until now." They finished the chores together, working in comfortable silence. Slowly Jonas healed. First he could sit up without wincing, then walk without limping, then finally work again, though Clara watched him like a hawk and forced him to rest more than he wanted. "You're worse than Ellen," he grumbled one afternoon when she made him stop for the third time. Clara froze. It was the first time he'd compared her to his dead wife, the first time he'd said her name without that shadow of grief crossing his face. "Is that a compliment or a complaint?" Jonas considered. "Bit of both, I reckon." "I'll take it." February arrived with a thaw that turned the ranch into a sea of mud. But with the mud came hope. The worst of winter was behind them. Spring was coming, and with spring came news that changed everything. Father O'Brien rode out one Sunday afternoon, his face grave. "There's been talk in town," he said, accepting the coffee Clara offered. "About the bandits who attacked you." Jonas straightened. "What kind of talk?" "They've been caught. The territorial marshal tracked them to a mining camp near the Colorado border. They're standing trial next month in Cheyenne." "Good. They deserve whatever they get." "There's more." Father O'Brien hesitated. "One of them talked. Seems they weren't just random bandits. Someone hired them. Clara's blood went cold. Who? A man from back east. Sent money through an intermediary. Instructions were to discourage you from staying in Wyoming Territory. Jonas and Clara exchanged a look. They both knew who it was. Ashford, Jonas said flatly. The marshal wants to speak with you, with both of you. If this can be proven, it's conspiracy to commit murder. Clara's hands trembled. William had done this. William, who claimed to love her, had hired men to beat her husband and leave him for dead. I'll go to Cheyenne, Jonas said. As soon as I can travel. I'm coming with you. Clara. He did this because of me, because I chose you. I have to face him. Jonas studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. Together, then. Together. The journey to Cheyenne took 3 days. They left the children with Ruth, who accepted the responsibility with a maturity that made Clara's heart swell with pride. Take care of your brothers and sisters, Clara told her. I will. Take care of each other. We will. The territorial courthouse was larger than Clara expected, filled with people and noise and the sharp smell of tobacco smoke. The marshal, a grizzled man named Patterson, took their statements, showed them the evidence. Letters connecting William Ashford to the hired bandits, money transfers, a paper trail that led directly to a wealthy Cincinnati businessman. He'll hang for this, Patterson said bluntly. If the jury convicts. Will they? He's rich. Rich men sometimes get away with things poor men wouldn't. But the evidence is strong. And you're sympathetic witnesses. The trial began 2 days later. Clara sat in the gallery, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, watching as William Ashford was led into the courtroom. He looked different, smaller somehow. His fine clothes were wrinkled, his hair unkempt, his face pale and drawn. When his eyes found Clara in the crowd, something flickered across his face. Not remorse, not regret. Anger. Pure, undisguised anger. Clara didn't look away. She held his gaze until he was forced to look elsewhere, and in that small victory, she felt a strength she hadn't known she possessed. The prosecution presented their case. The letters, the money transfers, testimony from the captured bandits who had turned on their employer in exchange for lesser sentences. The defense argued that William was innocent, that the evidence was circumstantial, that a man of his standing would never stoop to such violence. Then Clara was called to testify. She walked to the witness stand on legs that felt like water, her heart pounding so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. State your name for the record. Clara Hartley, formerly Clara Winslow. And what is your relationship to the defendant? He was my fiancé for 3 years. What happened to end that engagement? Clara took a breath. I contracted a fever. The doctor told me I could never have children. When I informed Mr. Ashford, he ended our engagement and married another woman within 2 months. A murmur ran through the courtroom. And how did you come to be in Wyoming Territory? I answered an advertisement. A widower with 6 children needed help. I came to assist him. And that widower is now your husband? Yes, Jonas Hartley. The prosecutor nodded. Mrs. Hartley, did the defendant contact you after you arrived in Wyoming? He sent a representative first, a man named Thomas Reed. When I refused to return with him, Mr. Ashford came himself. And what happened during that visit? Clara looked at William. He stared back with hatred in his eyes. He asked me to leave my husband and return to Cincinnati with him. I refused. He told me I was making a mistake. I told him to leave and never come back. Did you see him again after that? No. But 3 weeks after our wedding, my husband was attacked by bandits on his way home from Clearwater. They beat him, left him for dead, stole everything we had. And you believe the defendant was responsible? I know he was. He couldn't stand that I chose someone else, that I was happy without him. So he tried to destroy what I'd found. William's lawyer objected. argued that Clara was speculating. But the damage was done. The jury had heard her. They'd seen her face. They'd felt her conviction. Jonas testified next. Described the attack, the beatings, the taunting from the bandits who'd told him that his wife's fancy man wanted him gone. When the closing arguments were finished, the jury deliberated for less than an hour. Guilty. William Ashford was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. As they led him away, he turned to look at Clara one last time. "You ruined me," he spat. Clara stood, straightened her spine, met his eyes without flinching. "No, William, you ruined yourself. I just survived it." She walked out of the courthouse on Jonas's arm, leaving William Ashford and everything he represented behind her forever. The journey home felt different, lighter somehow, like a weight Clara hadn't known she was carrying had finally been lifted. "It's over," she said, watching the landscape roll past the wagon window. "It's over," Jonas agreed. "He can't hurt us anymore." "No one can, not as long as we stick together." Clara leaned against his shoulder. "I'm glad I came to Wyoming." "So am I." "I'm glad I answered your advertisement." "I'm glad you were foolish enough to respond." She laughed. "Foolish? Brave, then. Brave and foolish are often the same thing." "Are they?" "In my experience." Jonas pulled her closer. "But that's what I love about you. You're brave enough to do the foolish thing and stubborn enough to make it work." "Is that a compliment?" "Highest one I know." They arrived home to find the ranch still standing, the children healthy, and Ruth standing on the porch with Molly on her hip. "You're back." The children swarmed the wagon before it fully stopped, all of them talking at once, asking questions, demanding answers. Clara looked at their faces. Ruth no longer hostile, but strong and capable, and growing into a remarkable woman. Henry standing taller every day, becoming the man his father always knew he could be. Lucy emerging from her shell, showing flashes of humor and warmth. Samuel wild as ever, but learning to channel his energy. Violet speaking more now, asking questions, engaging with the world. And Molly reaching for Clara with absolute certainty, calling Mama with joy in her voice. This was her family, not by blood, not by birth, but by choice, by love, by the thousand small moments that had woven them together into something unbreakable. "Is the bad man gone?" Violet asked quietly. Clara knelt down to her level. "Yes, sweetheart. The bad man is gone. He's never coming back." "Promise." "I promise." Violet threw her arms around Clara's neck, holding tight. "I'm glad," she whispered. "I don't want anyone to take you away." "No one will. I'm yours. Forever." That night after supper, after the chaos of reunion had settled into comfortable routine, Clara stood on the porch and watched the stars come out. Jonas appeared beside her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. Thinking deep thoughts. Just grateful. For what? Everything. Nothing. She smiled. "A year ago, I was alone in Cincinnati, convinced my life was over. Now I'm married to a wonderful man, mother to 6 incredible children, living on a ranch in Wyoming Territory. Quite a change. The best change, the only change that mattered." Jonas turned her to face him, his hands warm on her shoulders. "Clara, I need to tell you something." Her heart skipped. "What?" "That first day, when I saw you climb off the stage in Clearwater, I knew." "Knew what?" "That you were going to change everything. That nothing would ever be the same after you came into our lives." He cupped her face in his hands. "I was scared. After Ellen, I didn't think I could love anyone again. But you walked into my house and my children's hearts and my heart, and you made it impossible not to." Tears streamed down Clara's face. "Jonas, I love you. Not because I need you, though I do. Not because the children need you, though they do. I love you because you're you, strong and stubborn and brave and kind. I love you because you saw a broken family and chose to help mend it. I love you because you stayed when everyone else would have run. I love you too, Clara whispered, more than I ever thought possible. He kissed her, then soft and slow and full of promise. When they broke apart, Clara laughed through her tears. What a pair we make. Two broken people finding each other. Maybe that's how it's supposed to be. Maybe we had to break so we could fit together. That's surprisingly poetic for a rancher. I have hidden depths. I'm discovering that. They stood together watching the stars, listening to the wind, feeling the solid earth beneath their feet. From inside, the sounds of children laughing drifted through the windows. Ruth's voice stern but affectionate. Samuel's wild cackle. Molly's delighted squeals. Home. Clara had searched for it her whole life. In the boarding houses of Cincinnati. In the arms of a man who never deserved her. In the dreams she'd thought would never come true. And she'd found it here. In a weathered ranch house at the edge of civilization. In the arms of a tired widower with kind eyes. In the hearts of 6 children who'd made room for her. Come inside, Jonas said. It's cold. In a minute, I just want to remember this. Remember what? This moment, this feeling. The exact instant I realized I was finally home. Jonas smiled. You can have all the moments you want. We've got a lifetime of them ahead. Clara took one last look at the stars, at the vast Wyoming sky, at the endless possibilities stretching out before her. Then she took her husband's hand and walked inside, into the warmth, into the light, into the life she'd never dared to dream of. She'd come to Wyoming Territory expecting nothing. A barren woman answering a desperate advertisement. A last resort for both of them. She'd found everything. A husband who loved her exactly as she was. 6 children who called her mother. A home that welcomed her. A future that sparkled with promise. Clara Hartley closed the door on the cold winter night. Inside, Molly reached for her and Clara scooped her up without thinking, settling the toddler on her hip with the ease of long practice. Story? Molly asked hopefully. Yes, sweetheart. Always. She sat in the rocking chair by the fire, children gathering around her like planets around a sun. Jonas stood in the doorway watching his face soft with love. And Clara began to speak. Once upon a time, there was a woman who thought she couldn't be a mother. Ruth leaned against Clara's knee. Henry sat beside his father. Lucy curled up on the floor with her sketchbook. Samuel bounced impatiently. Violet sucked her thumb. Molly nestled against Clara's chest. Family. Her family. Not by blood, not by birth, but by something stronger. By choice. By love. By the unbreakable bonds forged in struggle and laughter and tears. Clara looked around at the faces she loved, at the life she'd built, at the home she'd found in the most unexpected place. She'd been called barren once, broken, empty. She'd never felt more full. Because home wasn't a place. Home was these children climbing into her lap. Home was this man watching her with love in his eyes. Home was this family imperfect and beautiful and entirely, completely hers. And Clara Hartley, who had crossed 2,000 miles to find where she belonged, finally understood the truth she'd been searching for her whole life. She had never been broken. She had simply been waiting for the right people to make her whole.